Channel, XRP got snubbed. Did you hear about this story from 2 days ago? Here's the headline from CoinDesk. US government starts pushing economic data onto blockchains as proof of concept. And yes, this is a real thing. The United States government indeed has published economic data onto various blockchains, by the way, including Stellar, but not including the XRP ledger. And you might scratch your head going, wait a minute, this doesn't make any darn sense. Why? Well, in particular, because Stellar, ticker symbol XLM, of course, Stellar is a clone of the XRP ledger that was modified to a certain degree. Literally, the open source code of the XRP ledger was ripped by Jed McCaleb and then altered and ultimately published, and here we are all these years later. And that's fine. I'm not bemoaning that fact. Like, that's just the nature of this. Forks happen all the time in crypto. Not exactly a problem. Forks, clones, you name it. But isn't it kind of strange? You'd think XRP larger in market cap, greater adoption. What exactly would cause the United States government to use Stellar instead of XRP ledger when the XRP ledger obviously, at this point, nothing against Stellar. Like, I've been holding Stellar Lumens since 2017, but it's obvious that XRP is a bit more set in stone and established here. And from a technological perspective, it absolutely can do the things that the United States government did with these blockchains. For sure it can. In fact, I'll prove that. So why was XRP snubbed here? Well, actually, I've got the answer for you. Not from the administration, so you can say technically it's speculation, but it makes so much sense, I'd be surprised if anybody after watching this video would dispute it. But technically it's speculation, but I'll just say I feel highly confident. But before going further, I do want to be clear, I do not have a financial background of any kind. I am not offering financial advice, and you definitely should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. I'm just an enthusiast who enjoys making YouTube videos about crypto-related topics, but just as a hobby and just for fun. All right, and so here's the headline from the Crypto Basic. Validator publishes US GDP data on XRP ledger, explains why the government did not pick XRP. An XRP ledger validator has shown that the network can easily manage the same task the US Department of Commerce recently carried out on other blockchains. VET, an XRP ledger DUNL validator, showed that publishing official economic data on-chain is possible on the XRP ledger in a simple and low-cost manner. This has raised further questions about why the US government excluded the XRP ledger from its recent initiative. Now, for context, the Commerce Department recently announced that it had begun publishing key economic data, starting with GDP figures, directly on public blockchains. And I'll pause to note, here's the quote from Secretary Lutnick. For the purposes of the time, I'm not going to read it, but if you want to pause here and read it, you can. This is from the US Commerce Department on X. Like, this is official. This is a very real thing, and you love to see this. This is the type of thing that would have seemed impossible a year ago, but elections have consequences, and if you're in crypto, the consequences on that, very good. Certainly very good here. Anyway, piece continues. However, some XRP proponents noticed that the XRP ledger was not part of the list, even though it has proven to be a trustworthy destination for low-cost and efficient data storage and transactions. Most insisted that the XRP ledger could actually handle the task. Interestingly, to prove that the omission had little to do with capability, VET recreated the government's method on the XRP ledger. He stored the SHA-256 hash of the GDP report in two different ways. Once as a memo within a transaction, similar to Bitcoin's approach, and once inside a non-fungible token that included both the hash and a link to the original file. So let's just go to the source material so you can see exactly what they're talking about. This is VET's account on X, and again, XRP Ledger DUNL Validator. He's been around for quite a while, doing some good work. And he wrote here, I just published the U.S. that's the account I just showed you, I think, right? Yeah, U.S. Commerce Department, U.S. Gross Domestic Product second quarter data on the XRP ledger directly. And I'll just pause again to reiterate, since the government didn't do this themselves, they did it on other chains like Bitcoin. Actually, let me show you the list here. Look at this list. This data was published on Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, Tron, Stellar, Avalanche, Arbitrum One, Polygon POS, and Optimism. All of those, but not the XRP ledger, right? And so that's why Vet did it, to prove that it was possible. And he did it, well, he used two methods, as I'll show you in a sec. One method is effectively the same as what was done on all the other chains. And so he then wrote, in a few seconds and fractions of a penny in fees, I stored the data on the XRP ledger, actually twice. I stored the SHA-256 hash of the report as a memo, like they did on Bitcoin, but also stored the hash plus PDF link in a NFT, all native layer 1 features without contracts. And by the way, that second part, storing that with the PDF as an NFT, you can't do that with Bitcoin, but they still selected Bitcoin, even though this is superior. Here it is. Here's the actual transaction. I'm using the BitHomp website. I'm sure most of you are familiar with this unless you're brand new to crypto, in which case, welcome. We're certainly happy to have you here. BitHomp, it's an XRP Ledger Explorer, so you can look up all sorts of stuff on here, including every single transaction in history. It just pulls the data directly from the XRP Ledger. And so here's the transaction, and right here in the memo line, this is the relevant portion, right? And so Vet published the US GDP report on the XRP Ledger by storing its SHA-256 hash in the memo line. That's what I'm highlighting right here. So that's basically a digital fingerprint of the file, not the report itself, just a short cryptographic code that proves the report is authentic. And so, of course, anyone can take the official PDF, hash it, and if the code matches what's on the XRP Ledger, they know it hasn't been tampered with. And so it's cheap, it's fast, and frankly, it's permanent. It's immutable. So it's a way to anchor government data directly onto the ledger. And in a world that's increasingly easy to fool people with all sorts of data, this is a way to prove what's real from what source and what isn't. So this is going to be really valuable for our species moving forward, especially with AI and all the deepfakes and all that crap. This is going to be of critical importance, actually. And this is a pilot program that they launched here, but it actually works. So that's it. That's the hash right there. It can absolutely be verified. It's on the XRP Ledger. There's the proof right there. But he did more. He did more. So he did like I said, the NFT. So that's what's on your screen right here. And again, of course, this is the BitHomp website, but it's pulling data directly from the XRP Ledger. Caveat, though, as it pertains to the image on your screen. So this is the NFT and the way people word it is that the NFT is on the XRP Ledger, but let's parse this out a little bit here. So the XRP Ledger doesn't actually store the government's PDF or image. It only stores a cryptographic fingerprint of it. So what you see on BitHomp right here on your screen, it's just the Explorer, the XRP Ledger Explorer, pulling that external file and matching it to the on-chain proof. That's what it's doing. And that's how it's done on other chains as well, of course. Otherwise, you're going to bog down the chain. So this way, the ledger, it stays lean. The blockchain stays lean. And, the authenticity, which is kind of the point of this, it stays guaranteed. And so that's not unique to the XRP Ledger. I just wanted to highlight this. So when you look at this, and it's fine the way people word, this is colloquially just how we speak. We're like, the NFT is on the XRP Ledger. Okay, well, there's data behind it, but it doesn't mean the image itself is. It's not. In fact, the image itself is on the IPFS website, which is decentralized, but it's not the XRP Ledger. And here's the actual data. This is it. And so this is actually above and beyond what the U.S. government actually did. You have the PDF here. Unless I just haven't heard about it, as far as I know anyway, I don't think to this point, could be mistaken, just let me know in the comments if I'm wrong, but I don't think that the government did an NFT version where you can actually see the PDF itself. As far as I know, it's just the hash. But here it is, right here. And it links directly to the XRP Ledger, and you can pull up the data, like I said, on BitHomp. Easy to see here. So somebody asked Vet on X, or made a statement and a question, said, one might presume that it's not about being able to merely print or copy the data onto any given chain then, but rather being able to make that data actionable via smart contracts, perhaps. So he's asking there, wait a minute, well, maybe the reason that the XRP Ledger wasn't chosen is because it doesn't have native smart contract functionality. Well, Vet responded to that and he said, it's broadcasted also on non-smart contract chains like Bitcoin, which of course I mentioned earlier in the video. It says with smart contracts, any Oracle data becomes a lot more usable for sure. So fine, there's more that you can do if smart contracts are on layer 1, but first of all, the XRP Ledger I won't be surprised if the XRP Ledger does end up with some level of smart contract functionality one day. Even David Schwartz is behind that now. He's one of the creators of the XRP Ledger, of course. So wouldn't be surprised if that happens, but I'm asserting that even without that, just as is, this works perfectly for this use case. It just makes a ton of sense to store this data on as many chains as possible. Abso-frickin-lutely. Hell yeah. So I'm not saying that XRP ledger should be the only one, but it should be one of them. It should be expanded to this, right? And then there's also this, because you're still wondering probably, well, why hasn't that happened? Yes, indeed. Well, we were getting to the heart of the matter right now. Somebody named Spade wrote to Vet and said, it's less about the ability to post it and more about the fact they blatantly chose not to do it on the XRP ledger. Very telling about how they view it. Okay, lots of people had that take, and I can't blame people for speculating that's the case, but that's not the case. Almost certainly that's not the case. And Vet has the answer for you. Check this out. He says, it's a matter of availability, actually. They distributed it via Pyth and Chainlink. Both services are not publishing data to the XRP ledger yet. It's not that deep, Spade. And so there you go. That, I think, knocks it out of the park. And so, yeah, fine, technically speculation, but come on, folks. Every single chain that it was published to was because there was a connection with Pyth and Chainlink. Every single one of them. No chain that doesn't have those links had that data published. XRP Ledger does not have that connection. Nothing can be distributed that way today anyway. Doesn't mean that can't change. But it seems very obvious that would be why. It's not like they're like, screw that XRP thing. We're going with Stellar. Like, come on, guys. Like, I can't prove that, but I'm just saying, does that really make more logical sense to you? Or might there be a perfectly rational explanation? Because they just put in the data and then it just shot out to all these blockchains. Isn't that a little bit easier? I'm thinking the answer is yes. And then there was this from somebody named Nanad, who wrote, technically, would there be a need for a second chain/solution, Chainlink/Pyth, if the data is published on the XRP ledger? And Vet wrote, what Chainlink and Pyth would offer is a faster, reliable, and verifiable distribution of the data. You can do it manually, like me, but it's more usable if you use a distributor that puts it on a bunch of chains. And so there you go. I think that's it. It's just a pilot. It's not that big a deal. XRP snubbed? Some people think so, and you're entitled to your perspective, of course. I don't think so. I think that this is the reason why. But I wanted to talk about this because there's all sorts of people throwing hissy fits about this, and fine, but I mean, that's what the internet's for. Like I always say, like the internet exists so that we can complain about stuff. It's like an everyday Festivus, gather around the poll and air your grievances. It's a good time, everybody. Ain't denying that. But I don't think it goes that deep. In this particular case, I really don't think that it goes that deep. You let me know what you think in the comment section below, though. I'm not a